Hey everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. In the previous Q&A video, we asked for some questions to answer, and we got a question relating to Kansai-ben, which is a pretty healthy topic, so we decided to make a whole different lesson for that actual question instead of grouping it with the other Q&As. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to combine the introduction of Kansai-ben with the introduction of Hougen. So in this lesson, we are covering Hougen and Kansai-ben. Very short introductions to both of those. So what is Hougen? Well, Hougen is going to be a linguistic term that basically translates to dialects. So similar to how in, say, the United States, the English language will sound different depending on where you are regionally, such as East Coast or West Coast. Well, the same is going to pretty much apply to the Japanese language. And so the most general distinction in Japanese language and culture is going to be Western Japanese and Eastern Japanese. So there are a lot of different Japanese dialects, way too many to just list out right here and now, but generally speaking, if we're talking about Eastern Japanese, it's going to be represented by Tokyo type Japanese, or otherwise known as the Standard Japanese, which is basically what this channel has been based on to this point. It's called Standard Japanese because it has been made pretty much the formal type of Japanese. It's taught in formal education, it's used in public media, etc. Now if we move into Western Japanese, again, there's a lot of dialects in just Western Japanese as well, but the one that we're going to discuss in this video in particular is going to be Kansai-ben, also known as Osaka-ben, because that's probably the most popular, and because we got a question about it, because it's probably the most popular, so yeah. So Osaka-ben is called Osaka-ben because, well, it's the basically dialect used in Osaka, and ben here is just going to be the suffix that means dialect basically. More generally, it's called Kansai-ben because Osaka is in the Kansai region, and this dialect is also used in places other than Osaka that are in the Kansai region basically. So the three main differences that we'll notice in Kansai-ben and Japanese dialects in general basically are number one, pronunciation and intonation, which we won't cover in this video because pronunciation is probably the thing I'm worst at. Number two, the common vocabulary and the common phrases that are used. And number three, basically just the grammatical differences, which we will focus on the most probably. Okay, so getting into this, let's go over three of many common Kansai-ben phrases. So first up, when we're using standard Japanese, we can use the word dame to mean no good. In Kansai-ben, we're not going to use dame, we're going to use instead akan, and it's going to mean the same thing. Next up, if we're speaking in standard Japanese again, we might want to use the word totemo to mean very or really. In Kansai-ben, we're not going to use totemo, we're going to use instead mecha. So for example, instead of saying something like totemo kawaii, we're going to use mecha kawaii. And both of these will mean very cute or really cute. One's just in standard Japanese, one's in Kansai-ben. And to compare to the English language, this might be comparable to something like the usage of the word hella. Last but not least, we have the word baka, which is used very often in standard Japanese, but in Kansai-ben, we're not going to use baka, we're going to use aho. And both of these words will translate to something along the lines of idiot or fool. They're just different words that are used depending on where the speaker is from, basically. Okay, now we're going to move into the bulk of this lesson, and this is going to be the grammatical differences between Kansai-ben and standard Japanese. So this is what we're going to change in our standard Japanese to make our words seem more like Kansai-ben. So in standard Japanese, when we use the negative nai form, well, it's just going to be that. The verb's going to be in its negative nai form. It's going to end in nai. But in Kansai-ben, it's going to be different. Words in their negative nai form, instead of ending in nai, they're going to end instead in hen. Or sometimes even just the character For example, if we have the word shiranai, that's going to be the negative nai form of the verb shiru, to know, so that means don't know. Instead of shiranai, that's going to change into shirahen or shiran. Similarly, the word wakaranai, which means to not understand basically, is instead going to be wakarahen, or more simply just wakaran. Next up, we have the negative polite form, which in standard Japanese will end in the phrasing masen. In Kansai-ben, it's instead going to end in mahen. So for example, tabemasen will instead be tabemahen, and nomimasen will instead be nomimahen. Next up, we have the plain form da, which is usually used to end a sentence or something like that. It is instead in Kansai-ben going to turn into ya. So for example, if we say isogashi datta to mean was busy, that's going to change to isogashi yatta in Kansai-ben. Or if we have something like isogashi dakara, it's going to change into isogashi yakara. Next up, the sentence ending particle yo, which is usually used as something like an exclamatory or something, is going to change into de instead. So if we have tanoshikatta yo is going to change into tanoshikatta de. Similarly, the sentence ending particle ne is going to be replaced by the sentence ending particle na. So, for example, if we say ii ne in standard Japanese, in Kansai-ben, instead that's going to be na, and here e is going to be replaced by because that's just how they say good in Kansai-ben. And now our last grammatical mention is that when we're using the te form of a verb plus the phrasing iru to basically mean is doing the verb, instead of iru, we're going to use nen in Kansai-ben. So in standard Japanese, if you say nani o shiteru, that is going to be what are you doing? In Kansai-ben, instead, that's going to be nani shite nen. And another important thing to note here that's brought to relevance by this example sentence is that in Kansai-ben, particles are often dropped, such as the direct object particle marker o. And so yeah, that covers our very, very superficial introduction to Kansai-ben. And so yeah, this has pretty much just been the bare minimum of things that you should be exposed to when you're basically first finding out that there are different dialects in Japanese, such as Kansai-ben, Osaka-ben. And don't think that you're a master at Kansai-ben by any means after watching this video, because I personally am not. I've been exposed to it to a modicum degree, but I am no way qualified to teach you how to master dialects in Japanese. So yeah, this has been a very brief introduction to Hougen, which is dialects basically, and as well as Kansai-ben. So hopefully you learned something cool.